Hi, my name is Jesse Metzger and I'm going to be showing you my project introduction for BML 491, the capstone class, and I am doing it on FedEx Express. First, I would like to just give you a little bit of a background on the company. So it began with Frederick Smith, and he is now the current CEO of the company. And when he was at Yale University in 1965, he wrote a term paper that outlined some of the problems at that time with overnight delivery and with the delivery industry in general. And his proposition for an overnight service was not liked so highly by his professor, and he ended up getting a failing grade on it, which turned out to be a big mistake because 2 years later, or rather in 1973, that was the first day that FedEx Express flew out 186 packages on 14 planes. And that was the first night of delivery for FedEx Express. And from there, it has obviously grown to be the monster and the standard for the delivery service as we know it. One of its major accomplishments that it's had is that it is the first American company ever to reach $1 billion in revenue under 10 years, which is a huge accomplishment and hard to imagine that coming from such a humble beginning it could get to that point. A few of the major acquisitions that have highlighted its existence are in 1989 it purchased Flying Tigers, and that was an Asian-based company that allowed them to have a lot of business in that country, which really has benefited them now. Second, you see Caliber System Incorporated, and that is what has now become FedEx Ground. So that was really just an acquisition of all the different ground routes that we have here in the United States. Um, and that was in 1998. And then in 2004, FedEx bought Kinko's, which is now FedEx Office. And that is a huge part of their ability to process packages, and it makes a great drop-off point for people, but they also offer a wide service of office products and things that really just spread the whole portfolio of what they do. And finally, there is TNT Express, and that is their most recent acquisition. Some of those parts are still being put into place now, and over the next 5 years, they will be acclimated to the standard of FedEx Express, but that is a big deal, and it was purchased by FedEx for $4.5 billion. And because of that acquisition, FedEx now has more employees overseas than it does here in the United States, which is very unusual. Um, but everything that they have done here really just lays out the standard that they have set as a company that is always looking for ways to improve. And that's why this project, this vision, is important, because it shows that they need to continue looking for ways to improve and tweak their training methods. And then finally, because of all of these things and their flexibility as a delivery corporation, they have really become the standard in overnight delivery. So, looking at the project rationale, why should we change this training? Well, really, the courier training uh, has really lacked depth to properly equip the couriers when they go out on the road by themselves. I can attest to this personally, as well as other couriers that have mentioned this to me since I was hired and even before I was hired, who just had a feeling of being overwhelmed. And understandably so, there is going to be some of that on your first day alone on road, but I think part of it goes to the point of not feeling confident in the material, in the practices that you're being taught. There's an expectation and a culture that, oh, you get out there by yourself and sort of figure it out. And as admirable as that is, it can unfortunately lead couriers to make poor decisions that can result in not being safe on the road or delivering packages on time. And as I mentioned above, there are also a number of practices that will consequently slip through the cracks. And what I mean by practices are just the proper methods that they teach you about how to process a package or interact with a customer, or how you drive. And so that feeling of being overwhelmed can certainly affect the outcome of how you become as a courier. And that's very important. And finally, the result of those things is that you can potentially fail the customer. And whether that means you are late in delivering a package or picking up a package, or that maybe being unsafe on the road causes an accident, any of those things are ultimately failing the customer. And I have a couple of quotes here that I actually pulled from FedEx's mission statement, which this one reads, "Customer requirements will be met in the highest quality manner appropriate to each market segment served." So ultimately what that's saying is that customer customer is king, and in order to please the customer we need to do it in the highest manner and the highest quality, and if training is not being made to be as efficient as it can be, that might be lacking. And then secondly, their safety will be the first consideration in all operations. And I feel that that's very important because if you are potentially putting a courier on road who may not be ready, that can be dangerous, because not only are they driving on road, but they're handling hundreds of different packages that belong to people, and that's a huge responsibility. So it's important that that is reflected in the training that they are being given. So looking at the desired goals that we want, we really want to restructure the training in order to accommodate all the different learning styles. For me, the training experience went right over my head, and there were aspects of it that I remembered, but ultimately the way it was is it was administered in a lecture style where we were all given a booklet that covered all of the different aspects and all the rules and different procedures that we are supposed to do, and it felt very uninteractive. At the end of it, our test did require us to take actual envelopes, FedEx envelopes, and use the power pads, the electronic scanners, in order to process them. So that part of it we were trained on, but I feel the aspect of actually interacting with the space of delivery. And what I mean by that is I would like to see more interactive training where you are doing those things, you are actually handling packages, but you're doing it in a way that sort of replicates the atmosphere that you are delivering in when you're on your own. And then also I think group sessions are a very important method of learning, and that's something that we did not do in my training. I don't know if it's changed since then, but I'm going kind of off of how it was for me, and so that's why I wanted to have some of those things changed. And then finally, I wanted to allow new hires to do ride-alongs with couriers on road. And that's a huge benefit for a new hire, because even if you have the training done very well and they know everything, there is such a benefit to being with an experienced courier and watching them as they deliver packages, as they interact with customers, and just seeing them go through their timing, and it gives you a good idea of, oh, I should be going really fast, or maybe he goes too fast. And just looking at those different things from that angle is such a first-person, hands-on view that is very beneficial. And the reason that I want to add this in here is not because it's not being done, because it actually is done, but I believe it's not done enough, and unfortunately it's really done on an availability basis. So when new couriers are hired, they really only get to ride along if a manager feels that there's time. So it's not mandatory, it's not necessary, it's more of an availability thing. And I think it would be important for it to be mandatory because that's invaluable experience. That's really hands-on, first-person experience that makes a huge difference for a new courier. So, achieving these goals, how are we going to achieve them? Using the current booklet, the current training format, I would like to restructure the training to incorporate some of these interactive and visual methods of learning. So first of all, in order to do that, I would like to obtain a copy of the current training booklet and go over it and see where there's areas for improvement that would allow for some of these different methods of training and learning to happen. I would also like to find out research that could support the idea of interactive learning. You know, looking for some of those benefits. I think that would be a huge addition. And then trying to restructure the budget in order to accommodate some of these limitations, these current limitations with training. So that's really one of the most important things is where can the money be moved around in order to allow this sort of learning to happen. And the picture that's on the screen, I use that just as an example. Obviously, this is not as serious as what a nurse may learn how to do as far as being life or death, but just to get an example that that sort of interactive, simulative type learning is really what I would like to see, where couriers or certain stations would be fitted with like a mock front door and a porch, and couriers in their training are required to deliver a package in the proper way and going through different scenarios. See, that's really my vision for how this would go, and so that's why I included that picture there. So there are a few project limitations that I was able to think of. The first one is obviously money. Budgetary constraints are going to be the biggest reason why something like this would face a lot of obstacles, and it's certainly important to consider, but another area to look at might be how can the money that we're wasting on improperly trained couriers affect the budget as well. So there's different ways to look at it, and certainly going to require a lot of research going forward. The second is time management. And what I mean by that is just making sure that the time spent in training is being adequately filled and it's not being wasted, but rather that every second is saturated with opportunities for couriers to learn, to have group sessions, to go through interactive training, to be tested on their knowledge, and ultimately to be best prepared for going out on the road and doing their job well. And the final project limitation is just asking the question, is there adequate learning being done? So really just looking through all the training for the time spent and seeing, you know, is there anything else that we need to add to this? That sort of thing. So that's really what I mean by that, and ultimately the goal of all this training goes back to that mission statement that we want to have the highest quality standard for the customer while being safe, and that's really the main concern. So finally, I would like to talk about my mentor, who I have chosen my manager Mark Seigit, and the picture there is of Yoda with Luke Skywalker, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan, which made it appropriate for me to choose that image, but that's really the idea of what a mentor is. You know, if you picture Mark as Yoda, he's the one that's filled with wisdom from all of his experience, and I'm just looking to pick his brain, get his ideas, and certainly have his wisdom imparted to me. So he is the ops manager at our station in Milwaukee, and he began as a courier, which is pretty common for managers at FedEx. Most of them start as a courier because that's really the best way to learn the company, is to do the job. It allows you to see how it is being run, and as a manager, it allows you to reflect on that and see, why different things happen. He's had about 30 years of experience with FedEx Express. He actually came from Flying Tigers, which was purchased in 1989. So he's really had a very, very broad perspective of the company, coming from a different company and then being integrated with FedEx. And he's been a manager for, I believe, 10 years, and I want to double check that, but that's the figure that I remember him telling me. And finally, the reason why I felt he would be an appropriate mentor and advisor for me is that we have a really great working relationship together. He and I have gotten along, and over the past couple of years that he's been my manager, he's trusted me to the point of giving me extra responsibility, and overall, we've really developed to be a good working team, and I think that's why his role as being a mentor for me in this project is going to be so beneficial. So that is my project, and hopefully it can really develop into something that makes a lot of sense for the company, first of all, and also for me in this class, and I really look forward to the coming weeks. Thank you.